What's up, guys? Nintenjoel here once again, and we're going to do a video that I've been planning on doing for a very long time. I don't know why I've never really done this before. And there's nothing really going to be surprising in this video or anything like that. You can pretty much guess what these are going to be. But really, I guess I just want to talk about the Final Fantasy franchise and my favorites. So this is just my top 5 Final Fantasy games, and this is of all time. Doesn't matter what console. And this is just my list. Don't take it as gold. Just because I love one of these Final Fantasy games doesn't necessarily mean you are, so don't sue me. Alright, so starting off with number 5. Actually, number 5 is the first Final Fantasy game I ever played, and that is just Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 1 is a really, really cool RPG, and, you know, it's one of those classic games that you just can't deny. It's such a groundbreaking game at the time. There weren't many RPGs in America, and it just did it right for the most part. There were a few annoying things in this game, such as the legendary difficulty of the last dungeon, and also having to buy one item at a time. When you need to buy 99 potions and you can only buy one at a time, you will fucking curse this game. Also, another gripe I have with this game is when you're in battle, and like say you have all your members are going to attack one dude, and the first 3 hit it and destroy it, your 4th guy's attack is rendered ineffective. Love that shit. So they fixed this in later ports of the game, like on Game Boy Advance. They did the Dawn of Souls, and they remade Final Fantasy 1 on that, and added Final Fantasy 2, and they did a really good job with it. Really, really good job with it. I had a lot of fun with that. But anyways, Final Fantasy 1, despite its few flaws, is a great game with awesome graphics for the time, great gameplay mechanics, nice vast world to explore. You could have a canoe, you could have an airship, you end up, you know, getting into technological shit later on. It's a pretty interesting game and had a lot of good ideas. So it really was the start of the franchise, and it was the start of making an incredible franchise. The franchise wouldn't be here without this game. They just did such a good job with it, and you know, it was a huge hit in Japan and did fairly well in America, and it did well enough to actually spawn sequels. So thank God Final Fantasy 1 came about, and it's definitely my 5th favorite Final Fantasy game. It has to be in there because this is the start, man. So yeah. Alright, so number 4 is a game that I talk about on this channel quite a bit. Final Fantasy 9 for PlayStation 1. Final Fantasy 9 is a freaking amazing game. I have probably said those exact words before on this channel. Okay, so what makes Final Fantasy 9 a great game? First of all, it's got a great story. It's got very good character development, where almost every character in your party gets the works. They get a backstory, they get development going on in the story, and you get to learn a bit about who they are, and their relationships evolve with each other, and it's a really good story, and it's actually fairly dark. The graphically, this game is kind of a throwback to the old Final Fantasies, where it's slightly more cartoonish, not hyper realistic like Final Fantasy like 8, for instance, and you know, but it's a dark story. It really is, and it's a lot of fun to play. Not to mention there's the Tetra Master card game involved in there, which is just fun as shit. There's this card game that you can choose to play or choose not to play, really, in this game, and you can collect these cards, and it's basically a little battle system card game, and it's freaking involved, and it's fun as shit. And you can collect all the cards, and I love playing the card game almost as much as I love playing Final Fantasy IX, and I am not one of those guys that likes side things like that, like the gambling things in Dragon Warrior. I mostly ignore them. But yeah, that's one of the side things in RPG I love. Tetra Master fucking kicks ass. So yeah. Oh, and also, and I've mentioned, of course, in this video before, but the greatest thing about this game, honestly, in my opinion, is how you gain your abilities. You can buy a sword, for instance, and it'll have an ability hooked to it automatically, and if you can learn that ability, once you get enough points towards it from battling, you actually permanently learn that spell or ability, and then you can move on to the next item or weapon that you want to equip and learn that ability. And it's just really cool to gain your magic and abilities that way. It's really neat, and you get to do a lot of cross learning with a lot of people. A lot of people can learn a lot of the stuff, so it's pretty neat. Okay, so moving on to my third favorite. Okay, so this is the one that everybody bitches about. Everybody bitches about Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII for PlayStation 1 is a fucking great game. Yes, it may be a little overrated. In my opinion, it's not horribly overrated. It is a really great game. It's just that it's got so much notoriety and everybody knows what it is, but it's like nobody's played it. You know what I mean? It's like people hate on it, but those are the people that have never played it, or they've played it for 10 minutes or maybe an hour or two, or basically just never played the game to completion. Playing Final Fantasy VII to completion is a lot to me like playing Earthbound to completion. You don't really know what a great game it is until you get to the end. It's not like the end makes it, but the whole journey makes it. And games like Earthbound and Final Fantasy VII, while they are pretty hyped up, they certainly deserve some praise. And I love both of those two games. Earthbound I only played and beat not that long ago, and I love it. I actually thought the hype was actually justified. Final Fantasy VII is a bit outdated graphically, but musically not outdated at all. Great music, great sound effects. Even some of the graphics in the game are pretty awesome, especially the backgrounds, and the story is just amazing. It's really freaking cool. It's fucking awesome. It's a little emo at some points, but you know, that's alright. A lot of JRPGs are a little emo at some points. And again, same Final Fantasy IX, it's kind of a dark story, so be prepared for that. Some people have this kind of mindset where Final Fantasy is a little more lighthearted all the time, but it's not necessarily always lighthearted. So yeah, Final Fantasy VII, number 3. So, second favorite Final Fantasy game of all time is appropriately Final Fantasy II. Though, Final Fantasy II in the United States. In Japan, this is Final Fantasy IV, the 4th game in the series, and no matter how you slice it, this game is amazing. You know, the characters, oh god, Fusoya and freaking Cecil, or Cecil as they called him in the later parts of the game. I always thought it was Cecil. But Rydia, such great characters, and such a cool story. And back then, such leaps and bounds above the first Final Fantasy game. I mean, the first Final Fantasy game was really cool, and it really got you immersed, but man, when I saw Final Fantasy II, talk about immersed, man. I was just watching my friends play it at first, and it was just like, I could not get my eyes off the screen, and I could not get the music out of my head. I would go home, you know, not owning this game, and just have Final Fantasy II battle music stuck in my head constantly, boss theme music stuck in my head all the time, the town theme all the fucking time. I mean, this game, if anything, is worthy of praise because of the music. Arguably some of the best music in the entire franchise. Jeez, I don't know. That's a pretty tough call, but Final Fantasy II is amazing. It's got a cool story. I'd say the only drawback from Final Fantasy II would be how linear it is. It's pretty linear. There's not much deviating from your course, really. Whereas, like, some games are a bit more exploratory. Yeah, Final Fantasy II is pretty linear, but a great game nonetheless. And just everything about it's awesome. I love the graphics of the battle system. I love the jump from Final Fantasy to Final Fantasy II's graphics in the battle system. It's just fucking amazing. So cool, your spells and shit. So awesome. Alright, so last one. It's got to be pretty obvious. You know I'm not going to list something like Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy XII. No. I'm going to list the classic Final Fantasy III in America. Just like Final Fantasy II, it got the out-of-order treatment because we didn't get all the Final Fantasy games. In Japan, this is Final Fantasy VI, the one right before 7. And what a predecessor to 7 it is. Fuck, Final Fantasy III is a game I really don't talk about much on this channel because it's really hard to put into words a game that means so much to me. When I got my Super Nintendo, this came with it, and Link to the Past, and man, I barely played Link to the Past when I had Final Fantasy III. It's like, I had to play that. And I first started watching this game being played by a friend of mine in North Bend, and same thing as Final Fantasy 2. It's like my eyes were just glued to the screen. It didn't matter that I was not the one playing the game. The music, again, you know, the music in the town Zozo, or the battle music, the music on any single part of that game. Oh my god, the island where Gao gets his powers, however you pronounce that guy's name. I can't remember the name of it right now, but geez, the music is so badass. The like bass and drum thing going on, so freaking good. The music is just one little aspect of the game, though. Graphically, this was another step up from Final Fantasy II. This time it was like the backgrounds and the towns, and the whole world was just so much better, and it incorporated some Mode 7 with the airship, which was kind of cool looking, and you know, there was all these dark places to go to and all these characters that you can meet up with. So many characters that you could get, and then they'd leave for a while, and then they'd come back, and then you lose all your characters, and then they eventually become all found. And it's a crazy, incredible, dark story, and I cannot recommend Final Fantasy III enough. It's so hard to put into words how good of a game this is, and again, another game that gets a lot of hype, but at the same time, this one doesn't get bashed as much. This one seems to be universally hailed as a great game. I'm sure there are some haters, but again, are those haters the ones that have played it through completion? Because the journey through this game is incredible. It's really, really fun, and it's a lot less linear, that's for sure. You definitely can explore a bit more, and once you get the airship, you've got, you know, freedom to roam wherever the hell you want, and yeah, it's just so much fun. The enemy graphics, fucking so cool. I still want to get like some kind of enemy from Final Fantasy III tattooed on me. I'm not sure which one. I'm thinking maybe a behemoth. Not really fucking sure. But yeah, oh, maybe the Atma weapon. The Atma weapon on the like island in the sky. Oh my god. When I saw that graphically, I was just like, that guy is the shit. They need to make a toy out of that, and I don't think they ever did, but I still think somebody needs to make an Atma weapon toy. That's got to be one of the coolest looking bosses I've ever seen in a 16-bit video game. It's just so fucking cool. The spells, amazing. I can go on and on. Ultima, the spell Ultima in Final Fantasy III, being able to many times hit for 9,999 damage is so fucking satisfying with that sound that comes up. Oh man, it's like a nuclear bomb. It's so fucking badass. And the story, and also having just a twisted ass evil bad guy that's like really like just like this demented weirdo that like likes to laugh a lot and likes to cackle and fucking just be a total evil dick. He is fucking great. The Empire, the Rebellion, everything about this game, I can go on and on. I could have done an entire video on Final Fantasy III. I might eventually do an in-depth review of it, but I won't do that until I have gameplay footage. But yeah, eventually I will be doing that. For now, that's what I have to say about Final Fantasy III. It is literally one of the greatest RPGs ever made. In my opinion, I'd have to say it is the best RPG ever made. And I play a lot of RPGs. I don't think I've ever played one that's captivated my attention so much and has such replay value. For some reason, I can pop in Final Fantasy III anytime I want and be very satisfied with playing it. Oddly enough, the other one that I think is the most replayable is Final Fantasy IX. No idea why, I just think it's a very replayable game. The music, the graphics, everything about it. Okay, so that's my list. What do you guys think? If you guys were to make a top 5 Final Fantasy list, I know it's going to be a little bit different from mine, maybe even just the order, but I'm sure some games are going to be similar, some games are going to be different. What do you guys think? I know some people really like Final Fantasy VIII. I almost mentioned Final Fantasy V. No joke, Final Fantasy V almost made this list. I'm playing that on my Game Boy Advance right now. It's a great game. I know a lot of people like 10. I never really got into that game, or 12. But yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys like as far as Final Fantasy games. What would your top 5 be? And if you want to see more videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's down there and it's red. And if you did like the video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. And I have a Facebook page, Nintenjoel, very easy to find. And there's one more thing. Please share the video. That would be awesome. That's all I have for you guys. Give Final Fantasy some love. If anything, I would love to see a video response to this. This would be a very good video to get a video response from. So if any of you guys out there are RPGers and maybe want to do a video response to this, tag me in it. I'll watch it. I'll share it. I'll thumbs up it. All that happy horseshit. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Nintenjoel signing off. Keep rocking the retro games.